go anymore. Didn't know that a vehicle could drive through a dirt like that just on tattered tires and rims, but there it is. And as you can see, as the camera pulls back, a lot of open road up ahead. And these law enforcement officers, again, just content to let this driver be. Again, suspected DUI, Palmdale area. The driver hit some spike strips and has been driving on tattered tires. And there's another tire, looks like, coming off right now, or a rim, or a shred, or a piece of. Let's bring in Dennis Zine at this point, our expert. Dennis, so what you're seeing here, officers have been given chase for about, I believe, 45 minutes or so. And they've had opportunities to either pit or to try to bring this to a close. They haven't chosen to do that.
Well, he's isolated. When you look at the area, he's driving on a dirt road, no pedestrians, no parked vehicles. It's really a safe area if you want to take him into custody without endangering the public. The only person who's going to hurt is himself. So as we see the right rear tire, as you mentioned, is coming off. He's not going to be able to go too much farther. But if you want to get in a pursuit and have the officers follow you with the air unit, the ground units, the car's going to finally disintegrate if he keeps up with that particular action. And they've got time on their sides. Again, there's no cross streets, there's no pedestrians. He's in a very isolated area. This is ideal if you want to have a pursuit and not endanger the public. Mm-hmm. So this particular situation, they'll follow him. They may do a pit maneuver, but in this particular situation, not really necessary. He can't go that fast. He's obviously got the right tire gone. We don't know about the rest of them. But this will continue until he's waving his hand out of the window for something.
Right.
But he obviously doesn't want to surrender. I think he's got his emergency flashers on now. So this is just one of these bizarre pursuits that we see here in the county of Los Angeles.
Looks like, Dennis, yeah, and it looks like he may be stopping here, or now he's banging on the roof with the open hand. It looks like he's sort of lost control at this point. He's not able to go anymore. There's just not enough tread or traction on those tires that were spiked. He's putting his window up now. One officer pulled over, at least one. We see some sort of a weapon. I don't know if that's a taser or gun. Gun drawn. And the driver has one hand up. At least that's all I can see that's visible at this point. Can't see the other one. But those very darkly tinted windows, those windows went up immediately. He's no longer shaking his fist out the window at the officers behind him or flipping the bird. But he has pulled over, and we see 1, 2, 3, okay, officers, units there, and officers with their guns drawn. I see a rifle and some other weapons. I don't see any canines. Looked like all 4 of those tires were shredded and gone, and I didn't see an accident of any kind, but even the front bumper there was sort of wiggling, like you said, Dennis. It can only go so far, and either you have to wait till the gas runs out, or he reaches some terrain here as he's driving on a dirt road off of Pear Blossom Highway in this Palmdale area, where this chase just could no longer continue.
Right. If he was in a 4-wheel drive, then obviously he'd be able to continue. The officers in those Crown Vics, they don't have that 4-wheel capacity, or if they had some Explorers, they would, but they do have the air unit overhead, and obviously he's rolled the window up. He's in the car. The car basically dismantled. Is now the tires have disintegrated. At least you know the left front and the right rear. So why he rolled the window up after he waved his hands out, and now he's isolated in that car with the dark window. So the officers are in a position of advantage, yeah. And they'll try to talk him out. There's no use for a canine at this particular situation because the canine is not going to get into the vehicle. So as we see that one deputy went back to where the others are, they're using those doors for cover, and hopefully he'll open that window and come out. We don't know if he has a weapon or not. That's always a concern, if he's a DUI or he's wanted for some other type of crime. But the bottom line is, right now we're going to see a standoff between him and the deputies, and there's obviously sufficient deputies at that location to take him into custody. But he's not going to be able to move that vehicle. That's now come to a full halt, and he's isolated in the car, so they'll surround him. They may bring in some other vehicles in order to extricate him from the car, but at this particular time, they got guns pointed at him. Again, they don't know if he has a weapon or not, so it's on the err on the side of caution. They want to make sure they're protected. And there's no public in jeopardy here. There's no pedestrians, no homes, no businesses. So this is an ideal situation if you want to take someone into custody and not endanger the public. The car's immobile. He's standoff between him and the deputies now, and that'll continue until he decides to get out of the car, or they use other types of means to get him out of the car, which they have that capacity if they wish to do that.
And Dennis, it looks like he's a couple of times just while you were speaking, he's rolled the window down. It looks like he's done it again. Here's another time. He keeps rolling the window down. I don't know if he's taunting the officers, yelling at them. It looks like he's sort of shaking his hand, shaking a fist out the window, and then he rolls the window back up. And we've seen that a couple of times too, and this may be a third time. Yeah, he's rolling it back up again. It's those windows are. Yeah, sorry, Dennis. I was just pointing out the windows are. That's a very dark tint. I would say that's illegal. I believe you can't have dark windows there. Oh, he's trying to move the vehicle. So it looks like there's a steep grade that he's come up against, and without the tires, he doesn't have any grab, and he can't move the vehicle forward. But it looks like he's got. Well, there's at least this one vehicle next to him, and then all the officers in the defensive position behind him. He's rolled the window down again. He's yelling out the window again, and then rolling the window back up.
Yes, and those windows are illegal. You can't have the side windows tinted. You can't have the windshield tinted, so he's in violation of that. The back window you can, the rear windows you can have tinted, but the fact is that's a minor violation compared to the other activities that he's been involved in. He's not going to get to go too far because, again, with no tires and on a sand environment, that car without any tires, no inflation of tires, he's not going to be able to travel too far. He'll just go on the rim, and he won't be able to get any speed. But, again, the important part about this is there's no jeopardy to the public.
Right.
So whatever he wants to do, the deputies have the time, they have the patience, they've got the resources there. There's a number of units, and they'll hold him out as long as they need. And if they can bring in some of the other vehicles they have to extricate him from that car, they'll do that. But right now it's one of these wait-and-see situations as he holds the deputies off while he's in the car, and he's playing that open the window, close the window, open the window, close the window. He may be yelling at them, screaming at them, whatever he's doing. He's definitely not cooperating with their orders to remove himself from the vehicle.
Right. I was pointing out the dark.
I don't believe there's anyone else in there, Dan. I think he's all by himself.
Yeah, that's the questions that we have to ask. Is there someone else in the vehicle? Is there a weapon in the vehicle? And I was pointing out the tint on the windows because obviously for officer safety, can't see inside, don't know what's going on inside the vehicle. We don't have a report that there's another person in there or that there's a vehicle. All we know at this point is it's a DUI suspect. But once he hit the spike strip, it was a very slow speed chase. In case you're just joining us, Dan Cohen in the Fox 11 newsroom. You're watching live coverage right now of a very slow speed chase that's been going on almost an hour, and this is the conclusion. The driver hit some spike strips, and the tires are pretty well gone. They've been, what is left is tattered. He's basically been on the rims, and look at that. You can see the law enforcement there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or so, 9 officers with their guns trained. The driver here, possible DUI suspect, again, has been shaking his hand, shaking a fist. He was throwing money out a few minutes ago, throwing money out the windows and in neighborhoods. Not sure what he was trying to do, if he was trying to get people to come out on the roads somehow to get officers off his tail. It didn't work, obviously. But here he is. It looks like I don't know if that unit is parked too close that he couldn't actually open the door to come out, but the unit there is parked right next to that suspect vehicle, and he's just been putting his window up and down and yelling something we can't hear out the window at the officers, and at this point it's a waiting game. Just have to, I suppose, right, Dennis?
There's sufficient room for him to open that door,
and
remove himself from that vehicle. Again, we've got the vehicles with the push bars on there. If they wish to do that, but the car's immobile, so there's no reason to do anything else other than just wait and see what situation. They may be calling in for some additional units, some other equipment to extricate him from the vehicle. They may have a canine. I don't think he's going to get out and run, but if he does, obviously they'll go on a foot pursuit, and he's got no place to hide. He's in an open area in a rural area.
Yeah, so I can't imagine he would get very far, even if he did try to get out and run. The terrain there doesn't lend to running very far at this point. The road, however, in front of him is wide open. So if he were going to go anywhere, and he has tried, we saw him try to hit the gas and get away, but I can't tell. It's hard to tell from this chopper picture, but it looks like there's some maybe grade that he came up upon. He just didn't have enough grab. He didn't have any traction on what's left of the tires and rims there to go anywhere. So he just keeps putting the window up and down, and we saw both hands coming out a moment ago. He had both fingers over the driver's side window. It looked like he was screaming out at officers again, and then he retreated again and pulled his hands and his arms back in and put that window back up. So
he's definitely immobile. There's no way that car is going to go any great distance. With the tires, we know the left front's out, the right rear's out. What other damage is done to the car? But we've got the deputies. He's holding the deputies at bay. They're in a secure area. And as we see the deputies with the sheriff's vehicle, and they may be getting some other equipment prepared to remove him from the vehicle. They've got the capability to do that. There's a deputy with the flak vest, and they've got the ground cover. They may be launching tear gas into the vehicle. They may be doing that. They're doing something to the deputy behind the sheriff's vehicle. He's got a weapon that may be used to punch out the window of the car. As we see, he keeps on taunting them with his hands out. He'll open the door, close the door. So it's basically a standoff. The good part, again, there's no jeopardy to the general public. There's no pedestrians, no vehicles, no buildings, he's in an isolated area. He's in a good situation for the deputies to take him into custody eventually. He will finally give up, whether he wants to do it voluntarily or they'll get him out of that car, extricate him from the car. One way or the other, this is a pursuit that's come to an end. But those deputies have a lot of equipment available, and there may be more equipment coming online. You notice the deputies with their guns out, they do not know if he's armed or not, and they're using those vehicles as protection. Normally they have equipment in the doors of the vehicles to protect the deputies, and there's one deputy with a flak vest, and he may be firing into that vehicle. We're going to see that happen maybe in a second or two.
Can we talk about that for a moment? So you talked about the punching out maybe of that rear window. We saw the weapon that you pointed out from an officer. It almost looked like a pepper ball or pepper gun. Would it be a tear gas, tear canister? And he's got his hands out again. The window is almost completely up, just barely cracked, just enough for him to put his hands out. So at what point? He's been very unpredictable. Just trying to figure out what is it? Shoot out that back window? Shoot a tear gas canister in there? Pepper balls or what?
It could be a number of items that they have at their disposal in the field. I don't think any other equipment has been delivered. They may have some equipment en route to take him into custody, to take the windows out, to lob tear gas into the vehicle, whatever they wish to do.
Oh, okay.
Custody.
They're firing at him. They're firing at the vehicle. It looks like they're firing at the vehicle right now, and
there'll be non-lethal rounds, whatever they're firing. Okay. They're not going to be using lethal rounds. If they do anything, it'll be something to get him out, to remove him from the vehicle. Once he's out of the vehicle, they'll take him into custody. So what we see, those may be beanbags that they're firing at the vehicle to break the windows out. They're not using deadly force against him at this particular time, and there's no reason. He's got no weapon. He hasn't displayed any weapon. So they just want to extricate him from the car. So they'll use non-lethal means to remove him from the car, to force him out of the car. So we saw that they fired something. It may have been beanbag they fired, and that would hopefully get him to move out of the vehicle. So whatever it is, it's still a standoff. But it wouldn't be tear gas, because if it was tear gas, you'd see the tear gas coming from the vehicle, and you'd see him choking, getting out of the car.
He'd be out of there.
They maybe beanbag, but they use a beanbag device to break a window to remove him from the vehicle. So we're still at a standoff. Again, this will continue until they have a device or get additional equipment to remove him from the car. And it's very dangerous for them to approach that vehicle while he's in the car with those tinted windows, not knowing if he has a weapon. They're going to err on the side of caution. They got time on their side. Again, it's isolated. There's no spectators. The only spectators they have are the viewers on Fox 11 and Sky Fox overhead. So it's in a safe area while they're carrying out this activity to try and get him to surrender. And obviously, he's not going to go anyplace. And if he tries, he's going to get taken down real quick by the deputies.
He keeps putting his hands out, and he keeps showing the officers his hands, then he pulls them back in. He was pointing a moment ago. It looked like he was pointing at something. I don't know what he was pointing at, but the hands keep going out and the hands back in. And whatever was fired at the vehicle was clearly fired. It was high velocity, whether it was a beanbag. I mean, I can see it left at least 1, 2, 3, 4 marks on the rear driver's side window there. So you don't believe they were trying to shoot the window out right there, or shoot at that point?
Maybe with the beanbag, they're not going to be using deadly force at this time. There's no reason to use deadly force. I mean, he's obviously holding himself in the car, not coming out, not voluntarily removing. They're getting him out of the car one way or another, but they're not going to run up to the car if he does have a weapon, and they run up to the car, and then he starts shooting deputies. So they're not going to risk their lives for that, but they'll use whatever they can use at their disposal. Again, they have certain equipment in the field, and then they can call for additional equipment, and that may be en route from the station or from other units that have other equipment. As we see, the deputies are properly deployed. We've got deputies surrounding the car. There's no crossfire. They've got them to the right, to the rear, to the left. So there's no one in front. So they will hold the position of advantage until they can persuade him to remove himself from the vehicle. So we're basically at a standoff. They obviously want to bring this to an end. We don't want darkness to set in, because then you really got a situation without any illumination. So this should end pretty quick with his cooperation, lack of cooperation. Once he's out of the vehicle, then we can call a code 4. But at this time, it's basically a standoff. Again, no public in jeopardy, and it's simply him in the car. The car's disabled. He's not going to be able to drive it. And what we see is the typical standoff where he'll come to his senses, hopefully, or
they're firing
will use
again.
whatever force
They're firing
to get him
again.
out of the vehicle.
There's more fire. The vehicle's receiving more fire at this point. What, okay, so
those aren't both. They're not firing the live ammunition at him. They're
right.
not going to be doing that.
I'm
They'll
just
be
saying
using
that
non-lethal.
there's something. Okay, non-lethal, but he's receiving the driver. There's something hitting the vehicle. Pepper balls, possibly, right? Okay, and the window is now down. So the driver's put the window down again. He hasn't put it down. Now he's sort of hanging out the side a little bit. He's got his head and his arms draped down the door. He still looks like he's communicating with them. Obviously, he's within earshot, so he can hear, and he is able to communicate with them. He doesn't appear to be wounded. Whatever they shot at him, like you said, Dennis, are non-lethal. If they were pepper balls, they don't seem to be like... he doesn't seem to be that irritated by them, not like if it was tear gas or a canister. Okay, he is putting his hands over his face, though. Maybe they... I don't know what proximity and how close do you have to fire those pepper balls in order for them to really, have maximum effect, Dennis? Well,
they're penetrating the windows. Obviously, he's got the driver's window down. The window may be shattered at this particular time, but I don't think they're firing tear gas at him. That would be unlikely at this particular stage. But he is putting his hand over his eyes, but he'd be coughing if it was tear gas.
He is talking. He is communicating. And he is hanging out the driver's side there. We can't hear what he's saying, but it looked like there were some more pepper balls being fired there just from that. That's a guesstimate. But
well, they're firing some non-lethal. They have a lot of non-lethal weapons that they can utilize, and it's one of those non-lethal. Otherwise, he would have passed by now with the number of rounds that were fired in. But everyone thinks they're firing live ammunition. They're not. And there's no need to do that. He's a pursuit individual. He's wanted for DUI. They're not going to use deadly force just because he's refusing to get out of the vehicle. So they'll use non-lethal means to have him remove himself from the vehicle. Again, they see his hands, but there's no telling if he's got a gun under the seat or on the seat or in his waistband. There's no telling. So that's why they're not rushing up to the car. They want to make sure that it's safe before they approach that vehicle. And while he's flailing his hands around and apparently he's communicating with them, he's not cooperating, and they want him out of that car. Once they get him out of the car, then they will swarm him, get him down, get him handcuffed, and take him into custody. So what they're doing is what they're trained to do, is be patient and try to encourage him every way possible to cooperate. And obviously, he'll be taken into custody. He'll be booked on a number of charges. So as the pursuit came to a conclusion, while we see in this isolated area, time is on their side. They just don't want it to get dark. They want to take him into custody before darkness sets in. And as we see now, it's a little after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We still have a few more hours of light. So we're going to hold on to this until he decides. But they'll continue to do what they can do to encourage him to remove himself from that vehicle. And this will come to a peaceful ending, hopefully, for everyone involved.
He appears to be quite irritated. And he is a DUI suspect, and it's quite possible that he's drunk. But we don't know at this point. But he is screaming and yelling, and he was taunting the officers. It is 4 o'clock and top of the hour here. Let me just bring everybody up to speed and set the table, Dennis, if you don't mind. You're watching a live broadcast right now, the Fox 11 News. Right now, this is a very slow-speed chase that started a little over an hour ago. The driver here in this black vehicle that you can see, a slow-speed chase, the Palmdale area. It was on Pear Blossom Highway. He was driving on surface streets about 10 miles per hour, hit a spike strip at some point a little while ago, and has been basically driving on tattered tires and rims for the most part. Pulled off and is on a dirt road and hit some sort of a steep grade where he was no longer able to continue the chase. There are 4, 5, 6 or so units behind him, officers trained on him. There was another officer flanking him on his right, also that has a weapon pointed at this man, and he's been quite irritated, and window's been rolled up and down. He's been showing his hands, then pulling his hands back in, putting the window up, dropping it again, and clearly the officers have been trying to get him out to comply on his knees so that they can take him into custody, and at this point have not made any tactical moves other than they fired some pepper balls. In fact, we have some video of that. We're going to show you the video. This from just a few moments ago. The driver, again, as I was saying, irritable, window up, window down. They've been trying to coax him out, and here we're going to show you you will see these are the pepper balls, or non-lethal rounds, according to our expert here on the phone with us, Dennis Zine. He doesn't appear to be injured. He did put his hand over his face, like maybe the effect of the pepper balls had worked. Not a tear gas or a canister. That probably would have got him out of the car even quicker. But at this point, Dennis, it's a waiting game. There are no other drivers around, so there's no threat to anyone else in terms of that danger. There are no homes. There's an wide open stretch of road ahead of him. But the vehicle has basically been immobilized because it has nothing but tattered tires and rims. And the officer's just waiting it out from behind.
Well, what they have en route, Dan, is they're going to have special equipment and maybe the SWAT team members, but there'll be special equipment since this is being held off for a period of time. They will come and back up those deputies with other equipment, non-lethal. They have a lot of non-lethal weaponry they can utilize, and as we see, they've already launched the pepper balls into the vehicle. They've utilized those. That hasn't removed him from the vehicle, so they're going to bring in additional equipment, additional personnel. Again, they're not going to shoot the man with bullets and kill him in the car. They've got time on their side, so while you see those rounds going off, those are non-lethal rounds, pepper balls or tear gas or anything else they use to take people into custody. So additional equipment will arrive. As this has been a standoff now for a while, additional equipment will be arriving, probably with the SWAT team from the LA County Sheriff's Department, and they have specialized equipment that they can utilize.
What equipment, Dennis?
To get him from the vehicle.
You said bean bags that can break the glass, that will break out maybe that back window where they could fire a tear canister or tear gas.
Well, they can launch tear gas, pepper balls, whatever. There's a lot of non-lethal weaponry that the officers have at their disposal. In the field, they've got bean bags. They've got non-lethal weapons, so it doesn't kill anyone. And what they do is to try to utilize that to take him into custody. This particular individual is obviously resisting surrendering, giving up, or getting out of the car. So what they will do is if they have to break out those windows, and people question, well, why don't they just run up? You got enough deputies. Why don't they just run up and surround him and take him out?
Right.
If he has a gun, he could take out a number of deputies. So their life is very important, obviously, to them and to the general public. So they're not going to go up and run around this car and surround the car in the fact he may have a weapon. And they have to err on the side of caution. So this standoff will continue, but I'm sure additional personnel and equipment, probably from the sheriff's SWAT team, will be en route. Sometimes they helicopter them in. Sometimes they come in with their vehicles. But they will bring in additional equipment in order to utilize to break those windows out to get him out of the car. He'll come out of the car one way or another. Hopefully, he'll cooperate, but he hasn't shown cooperation at this point.
Okay. Dennis, please hang on. We want to bring in Juanita Navarro from LA Sheriff's. Juanita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so we're seeing the conclusion here to a slow speed but still very dramatic chase. This driver, his car has been immobilized at Peaceful Valley Road in Palmdale. They hit a spike strip, the tires are gone. Basically, he's just been driving on rims in a slow speed chase that's been going on for a little over an hour. Where are you? What perspective? What can you share with us?
What I can tell you right now is that the utilization of the spike strip has proven to be effective. That's exactly what we want. We want to neutralize the threat. In this case, no one's been injured. We've neutralized the threat. Now we have time to make sure that we implement all our resources. We have K-9 that's responding. We have several deputies that are out at the scene. They're evaluating and assessing the situation. We have various less than lethal options that we can utilize to breach this vehicle. We also have our Special Enforcement Bureau that will be responding at this time. So we have what we want at this time, a peaceful resolution. You have to understand that this suspect can put this to an end at any moment. He can comply with our orders and he can exit, and we can safely bring the community back to a safe environment. It's very important that the public does not come out. As you can see, you guys are pulling out of there, but as you can see, this is a desert location. This is an area where there's a lot of room, but ultimately what we want is we want a peaceful resolution. We're going to utilize our resources. We have time on our hands, and the most important thing here is safety. Safety for the suspect, safety for the public, and safety for the deputies.
Deputy Navarro, do you know, is it just the man? We haven't seen anyone else in the vehicle, but can you confirm that it's just this driver? And also, do you know, or have you been able to hear if there's a weapon? Does he have a weapon of some kind?
We don't have confirmation as to whether or not there's a weapon in the vehicle, if there's any other suspects or people additionally in the vehicle. But as of right now, we just want to make sure that he just complies, that he surrenders. You know, if there's something going on in his life, we want to talk about it. We want to help him. But as of right now, it's proven effective that the use of the spike strips, it has neutralized the threat. He is stopped, and right now, hopefully, he can reason within himself if we are not able to communicate or convey that to him, and he can actually just give up and allow this situation just to end peacefully.
Safety and protection of the general public is paramount. Safety and protection of the officers and safety and protection even of the suspect is of importance as well. Strategy, protocol going forward too, Deputy Navarro. At one point, will the officers elevate? I know those are very dark and tinted windows. It will start to get dark in a little while, and then it's a game changer in terms of knowing exactly what's going on inside the vehicle with this man. As we see, and as the camera pushes in, he's had some very erratic, and he looks very irritated. The hand gestures, he's been flailing. He was hanging out the driver's side, his head in his arms a few moments ago, and back in. At what point, I know you're patient, but at what point do you make a move?
Well, that's actually a good question, but you have to look at what we're dealing with here. We have time on our side. We are in an isolated area. We have it controlled at this point. We have our resources that are responding. We have a visual on him. I understand that you say that there's tinted windows, but as long as we can actually see him, he's venting, he's irate, he's upset for whatever reason. Some people, when they're upset, they do things, but as long as we can stay positive, stay neutral, have time on our sides, and allow our resources to come and assist us, we can bring this to a peaceful resolution. Yeah.
Those were pepper balls that were fired on the vehicle there that you can see right now. It looks like there were a couple that hit, and then there was another round of pepper balls it looked like that they fired, but I don't know if they were completely effective, and at what point is there tear gas as well, and basically, what's the next move here? You're talking about go ahead.
We definitely have several options, and that's the great thing about the Sheriff's Department. Our deputies are constantly trained in various less than lethal weapons. Basically, we want to distract him. We want to be able to actually have him surrender peacefully. We have a reverence for life, and that's what we want to do. We want to distract him, and we want to basically convey the message that, hey, give up peacefully so that we can bring this to an end. And at this time, the deputies are doing exactly what they're trained to do. They are utilizing their less than lethal options. They're utilizing their options. They're utilizing the time. Everything that they've trained to do, this is exactly what they're doing.
We haven't seen a weapon. We haven't seen anything, a gun, anything of that nature. We've just seen an extremely erratic and it looks upset, irritated driver here. And he has been shaking his fist out the window, and he even flipped the officers the bird a little while ago. I believe I did see that. And he was throwing money. So wild, and wild in terms of that. But we haven't seen any weapons. But I understand officer safety and the general public safety is very important. Is there anything else that you know about? Is the vehicle stolen? Do you know that? All we know is it's a DUI suspect at this point. Can you shed any light on that, Deputy?
Right. It's a reckless use suspect. This is a black Nissan. It's a four-door, and they've been pursuing this vehicle for maybe a little over an hour now. But what I can tell you at this point is that although he's irate, although he's upset, although he may be yelling, he can do all that, and we can work with that. We are trained professionals. We listen, we hear, we observe, but we also utilize our resources. And that, like I said, that's what these deputies are trained to do. They have time on their side. The safety of everyone, like I said, including the suspect, is paramount. And at this point, even from the onset of this suspect has a choice to give up at any time, and he could bring this to a close. He can bring this to an end if he so chooses.
And you can wait it out for minutes or for hours or for the rest of the night. I mean,
you know, it's necessary that we ultimately do not sacrifice maybe time or anything for safety. Safety is paramount. So however long this is going to take for us to go through our options, our resources that we are trained to utilize, that's what we're going to use. That's what's going to determine when this person gets taken into custody. We're not going to rush into judgment. We're not going to rush into any irrational actions. Everything's going to be our trained protocol that we're going to perform here, and that's what you're going to see.
Deputy Juanita Navarro, we appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to say that I didn't ask you?
Yeah, you know, people have bad days. He's in his car. Everyone has bad days, but to put the public in harm's way through a pursuit regardless of how fast or how slow it's going. You know, you have to think about other people before you think about yourself in situations like this, putting the public, putting deputies, putting yourself in danger. So think twice. You may be upset, but this isn't worth it. This is not worth it.
Deputy Navarro, we appreciate your time. Thank you, and want to bring Dennis Zine back in. Thank you so much, Deputy.
Thank you.
And let's set the stage one more time in case you're just watching an early edition of the Fox 11 News at 5 o'clock. This is a live picture of Palmdale right now from Sky Fox overhead, the end of a very slow speed chase, but every bit as dramatic as a high-speed chase. A driver here hit a spike strip a little over an hour ago. He's been driving on tires that were shredded, rims in residential neighborhoods on Palmdale, all the way down Pear Blossom Highway. He was on surface streets and neighborhoods, turned off into this dirt road about 30 minutes ago, and hit some grade where his vehicle was basically no longer able to continue. The officers that were giving chase have taken a defensive position behind. We may show you that pepperball video once again. The driver, very irate, very upset. He was shaking his fist, he was even hanging out the window here. His vehicle wouldn't continue. The officers have been clearly asking him to come out, or at least to communicate. And a few minutes ago, they fired a round of pepper balls that hit, and then a few moments and a few minutes later fired another round of pepper balls. But this driver, this gentleman, holed up inside that vehicle. We believe it's just him. We don't believe that he has a weapon, but with the tinted windows there and what we understand, the officers there obviously aren't going to take that risk. They don't know. So they have taken up a defensive position. There's even one flank to the right that you can't see right now, but many weapons trained. We haven't seen a canine, but other than the pepper balls, haven't seen an effective, basically forcing that gentleman out of his car. They said they're gonna wait it out. Dennis Zine, are you still with us?
I'm still here, Dan.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
they're going to wait it out here. And as you were saying, Dennis, nightfall. It's 4:15. It's not quite dark, but it will start to get dark soon, and that presents an additional challenge as officers are trying to figure out, if it's just that man in there, is there a weapon? And it's very hard with those tinted windows. But he's irate. He's a DUI suspect. That's all we know at this point. And officers are just trying to have a peaceful resolution. Fear, and obviously the hope is for protection for the general public, protection for the officers, and even protection for the life of this suspect.
Exactly. And as darkness sets in, I'm sure they have additional resources responding. As Deputy Navarro so eloquently explained what they're doing at this particular time. They have light trucks. They could bring in light trucks to illuminate that particular area. So darkness is not going to really hamper the deputies in doing what they need to do. They'll bring in their special tactics or SWAT team members. They have other equipment. They can utilize that other equipment. So they have the capacity to hold off and do what they need to do with non-lethal force and non-lethal use of force. And this does not escalate to a use of force that would be other than non-deadly force. So whether it be the bean bags or the other items they use, they'll continue with that. Again, they've got the air cover. They may be bringing in additional personnel from the special tactics by helicopter due to the distance and the time where they're dispatched from. So as we see a chopper coming in now, they'll probably have multiple choppers from the Sheriff's Department in addition to the immediate choppers overhead. But they have the capacity to hold off as long as they need to. Again, they're not going to rush the vehicle. They're going to wait for the special equipment, the special personnel, light trucks if necessary, and they're probably already mustering those resources. As we see, it looks like some of those deputies are going to be launched from the helicopter.
And Dennis, let me just jump in here for just a moment. The word we're getting is that these are paramedics. Yeah, you said that maybe the sheriff's special enforcement team, that they were choppering out to the scene here in Palmdale, but we're getting word that these are paramedics that are going to be lowered down to the ground there as well. So there were some pepper balls fired, non-lethal rounds, as you said. Want to have paramedics on scene, on standby there. This is standard protocol, Dennis?
Well, in a situation like this, you want to have all the resources at your immediate disposal. Again, they're in an isolated area. They're away from the major highways. They're in an isolated area, so they want to have whatever resources are necessary. So they will muster those resources. And again, I don't know how far they are in that particular community of Palmdale, but obviously if they're coming from remote areas, they want to bring in as quickly as possible. So it's not unusual to bring in the Huey helicopters and launch the deputies, the paramedics or whatever, from the helicopter because of the time to get with traffic. You can imagine what traffic is going to be like going up the highway, Highway 14 into Palmdale. So as we see, they're going to launch from the sky, and this is not unusual. The tactics are trained for this. They know exactly what they're doing. This is part of the training that they go through. So these were deputies that
well,
are
it's a heck of a way to get to work.
Well, this is how they do it. This is how they're trained. So they'll be there standing by. They'll have the equipment. As you see, they have all kinds of equipment with them, on them. They will launch from there. But I can imagine that the other deputies that are going to be responding by helicopter, due to the distance, and if they're coming from downtown Los Angeles or whatever, it's a long drive in traffic. So it's not unusual to utilize this resources. LAPD does this on occasion when they need to get people there quickly. Unfortunately, law enforcement, fire service, they have this equipment, special equipment, for this particular purpose. So I'm sure light trucks have been ordered, additional personnel have been ordered, and you think, why do they use all these resources for one person? Well, they're not going to turn around and get in their cars and drive away. This person's getting a lot of crime activity on their record, and they may have been through the system before. So it's not only a DUI. There's a number of other violations that are now going to be chalked up against this person, whether they've been in prison before, their criminal history. But as we see what's happening now, live on Fox 11, we see the deputies that are paramedics being launched from the helicopter, and there'll be a number of them that will rappel from the helicopter on the ground. Again, they're all trained for this. They go through extensive training. They've got a lot of equipment. You see the backpack, so they're well prepared for this. It doesn't happen every day, but when it's needed, they're there, and they respond, and as we see, they're there, and they're landing the personnel. The helicopter is going to stay airborne, but the personnel will go forward and do what they need to do to assist those ground units. But again, these are special personnel that are coming in, specially trained for this particular situation. They want to be well prepared to make sure of any situation that takes place.
Hi, Dennis. It's Christine Devine joining you back here with this coverage along with Dan Cohen here. We're watching this shot of the deputies who basically had to stay at attention here for a period of time. As I watch them there taking cover behind a vehicle for their own protection, their own safety, you really do have to still stay alert. Thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely you do, Justine. And what happens, they train for this. Law enforcement officers train for this. You don't use it every day. You don't use it every month. But when necessary, you have that training, and it swings into action. As we see, they're deployed. They're going to maintain control over the situation. He's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to rush the vehicle. They're going to bring in additional personnel, special personnel. So what we have is a standoff. It's a typical standoff where he's in the car. He's not causing any harm to anyone at this particular time. They're not gathering pedestrians around or residents or business people. Again, the benefit on this, it's an isolated area, off the beaten path, in an isolated area. So what happens now is time is on the deputy side. You see a number of cars that are lined up, deputy vehicles that are lined up, and they're all there deployed, and they're backing each other up. And then what happens now is the specialized equipment will arrive. They will then start to move forward and do what they need to do to get him out of that vehicle. So they will bring in additional equipment to utilize that. The deputies in the vehicles and the explorers, they have certain equipment to utilize. So in this particular situation, it takes specialized equipment, and that's, I'm sure, en route from the LA County Sheriff's Department.
All right, Dennis. Well, I was sitting here on the set waiting before we actually took this live to see what was going to happen with this slow-speed pursuit. Slow because the tires had been blown out because of a spike strip, yet the driver continued to drive. And here we are in this rural area. Like you said, it's off the 14 freeway in the Palmdale area, and as we're coming up on rush hour, any motorists going through that area on the 14 might see some kind of police activity off in the distance here. You know, you and I have covered so many pursuits, and to see the helicopter there, like you said, is unusual. My question for you, though, is paramedics being brought to the scene. Dan was reporting that they were dropping down paramedics. What does that tell you?
Well, not unusual to have that at this particular situation. They've got deputies that are paramedics. They do a lot of the search and rescue. So they're going to be there to maintain in case there is a need for them, in case the individual is injured, in case the deputy is injured, to get a paramedic unit up there with the apparatus. It takes time. So they're erring on the side of caution. They want to make sure that everything is covered. There's a textbook example of how you handle a situation like this. Normally, the person would get out of the car, put their hands up, get on the ground, be taken into custody, and that would put it to an end. In this particular case, we know the person's resisting, obstructing, delaying the deputies in doing their job. They're not going to let him go. The games he's playing back and forth, in and out, open the window, close the window. I think the window's now down for good because of the devices they've deployed on the car. So they're just standing by. They're not going to do anything until there's a necessity. But what they're doing is mustering up the resources in the event of situation, so they're ready there at the scene. Again, as we heard from Deputy Navarro, the concern of the safety of the individual or the suspect in addition to the deputies. But again, I want to emphasize, this is an isolated area, so it's an ideal situation. If you have a situation like this where you don't have pedestrians and bystanders and blocking off traffic, this is isolated off the beaten path, so you can secure the area. I'm sure they're doing that in addition to the resources, whether they come in by air or come in by vehicle. They're calling for additional personnel, specialized personnel, that will be here for that particular purpose. But they've got to make sure that all the resources are there. He can get out of the car right now, surrender, and the pursuit's over. He's into custody. Everything's fine. We want that to happen as quickly as possible. But as long as he's resisting, they've got to be ready for any eventuality, including darkness. But they'll bring in a light truck in case of darkness. Whatever the case may be, they want the resources there on site.
I can't help but think, Dennis, what a waste of resources when you think that they have to bother to bring out a light truck because it's going to become dark, all those law enforcement personnel, the helicopter.
Well, it's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. When you look at the resources, you look at the deputies that are already deployed there, the radio calls that aren't being answered. Those deputies have come off patrol. So the area that they're covering, part of L.A. County, the north part of L.A. County, the deputies that are there, they're not from West Hollywood, they're not there from Carson, they're there from that immediate area. So responding to calls, obviously, is not as efficient as it should be or could be because they're deployed for this. And you can't just have two deputies there unknowing what this individual has at his disposal. So you want to have the resources, and it's costly. It's very costly. The helicopter is expensive. Everything they're going to bring is expensive, but we pay our taxes so they can have the resources, and they need those resources for a situation like this. You and I have covered a lot of pursuits. Seldom do we see an isolated area like this. Normally it's on a surface street in the business area. You've got pedestrians, other situations to contend with.
Right.
This is rather unusual, but for the safety of the public, this is paramount in safety for the public. You don't have people in jeopardy.
Right.
You don't have children walking home from school. So that's the good part about it. But again, those resources have to be deployed.
Dennis?
All this for one individual.
Yeah, let me interrupt here because we have Sergeant Bob Daisy on the line from the LA County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant, we are witnessing quite a show of force here by your department from the personnel there in the vehicles, but also the helicopter. Can you talk to me about the helicopter drop?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. What you saw was our Rescue Air 5 helicopter actually responding to the location and deploying tactical paramedics. Anytime we do any kind of operation like this, especially in rural areas, we try to get as much resources as possible to the location. And what we did was we dropped a couple of rescue paramedics to the location to render aid to any deputy that gets injured and to the suspect once the suspect is safely apprehended, because we did use less than lethal force on him.
All right, so my question is, obviously, it's rush hour traffic, possibly out in that area. It's a little bit of a rural area. Were there not paramedics closer, or where did these paramedics come from?
Well, fortunately for us, our department is large enough that we have rescue paramedics, tactical paramedics, that are on our rescue helicopters when the rescue helicopter is in the air. We deploy 2 rescue helicopters during the day, and we're able to use them for a multitude of different incidents, whether it's actual rescues in the mountains, rescues out in the water, or for tactical situations like this where we need medical assistance to stage and be ready for whatever comes our way.
Well, I know the big goal is that this ends peacefully. Do you have any insight on this suspect or his condition? Or I know it was initially a DUI call where he continued to drive on the rims of that vehicle for a very long time and basically got stuck here, couldn't go up the hill. What are you learning about this suspect? Do you know who he is?
At this moment, we still don't know who he is. What we can tell you is that he is apparently a Hispanic male suspect inside this vehicle that's still refusing to come out. He seems agitated and irate. However, we don't know why yet. We do have deputies on scene that are trying to communicate with this guy to try to get him to come out so we can resolve this peacefully. However, not much is known about the suspect at this time.
So Are you getting any read from your people there on the scene as to his condition? Like, is he speaking to the deputies? Is he saying anything to them? Do they feel like he is under the influence of something? I mean, his behavior is obviously bizarre, putting his hands out of the window, rolling down the window, opening the car door at some point. Looked like he was even throwing money out of the car at some point when he was on the road. But like right now, I'm looking at him. It looks like he's interacting with the deputies, or somehow he's agitated.
Our deputies are trying to conduct an initial assessment. As you can tell, there's quite a bit of distance between the vehicle where the suspect is in, as well as our deputies, who are a car length and a half, 2 car lengths back. So what they're trying to do is actually get an accurate read and communicate with this guy. However, that makes it a little bit difficult. So all we want to do with this suspect at the moment is just to be able to inherently inform him to keep his hands visible and to calm down and ultimately come out and surrender to us so we can conduct a better assessment. We don't know if he's under the influence of any kind of narcotic. We don't know if he's under the influence of alcohol. We don't know if there's any kind of mental illness here. Fortunately for us, we have time on our side. Right. It is a rural area. It is an area that doesn't impact the public. His safety is paramount, as well as our safety is. So we're going to take our time and try to get him out peacefully, safely, as uninjured as possible, so we can conduct our assessment, get him the medical care he needs, and if there is any kind of mental illness here, get him the appropriate treatment that he requires in order to help him out.
Sergeant Basie, we have all covered a lot of pursuits here in Southern California. This is one of the more interesting endings for the moment. In fact, that we are at this rural spot, this location here near Palmdale, with this one of your vehicles right there. The driver obviously can apparently get out of the car if he wanted to. It's 4:30 now. It's still light out. What happens when it starts to get dark? What's the game plan here?
Well, fortunately for us, our department has such a vast scale that we can employ different types of tools, tactics, and resources to allow us to keep this thing going. If it does get into the nighttime hours, we have off-road lighting that we can apply to the situation. We have lighting on our helicopter that can come in and illuminate the area. And we'll utilize any resource we can to take our time to make sure that we can get this guy out peacefully.
As we pull out to this wide shot, we see the number of personnel who are there, who are involved in this. You have that helicopter. I get back to what I brought up with Sergeant Dennis Zine, thinking about the tremendous waste of resources here being used to bring this to a close. I think viewers might look at this and ask, is there anything law enforcement can do to move in on this guy, or how does it happen here?
Well, ultimately what we do is we utilize whatever resource we can in the field to respond to any kind of situation. That is when we have a dynamic situation that's rapidly evolving and we don't know what we're going to get ourselves into. As time progresses and as this situation begins to evolve in front of our eyes, the on-scene supervisor and the on-scene incident commander will start doing an assessment of what resources they need, what resources they can dispatch to go respond to other calls, and what else they can do to start controlling this situation a little bit more. So in your shot, as you can see, we have tactical paramedics, we have tactical scouts from our Special Enforcement Bureau. They're speaking with the on-scene supervisor and the on-scene incident commander. They're beginning to conduct a game plan that they could use to try to bring this to a peaceful resolution. Now, all of this is happening as we're deploying additional resources to the scene to try to get this guy to come out of the car. Ultimately, our crisis negotiation team will respond. We'll try to get him in communication with the crisis negotiation team, and hopefully he'll be able to get out of the car. But until then, we'll have a multitude of different resources, a multitude of different personnel on scene standing by in case they're needed for anything.
Well, I'm guessing with that crisis negotiating team, the goal is to talk this guy into surrendering, that he's not going anywhere. This is not going to end any differently than him being taken into custody. And that's what they do. They train to de-escalate situations. Sometimes you can communicate with somebody by cell phone, but it doesn't sound like you have that opportunity here.
At the moment, it doesn't appear that we have that opportunity. However, we do have a different multitude of resources, including landline cell phones that act as radio, that we can transport people back and forth. And, we'll try to find a way to get him some type of communication tool so he's able to properly communicate with us and hopefully begin that dialogue. Because ultimately, his safety, our safety, that's our goal. We want to make sure that everybody goes home safe, that no one gets injured, and we're able to basically bring a status to this thing and close it out.
Certainly erratic behavior there where he continued to drive. I mean, look at the tire there. He had 4 of those where he's riding on the rims for a very long time, moving his hands in and out of the window there of that vehicle. Every opportunity to come out. So really, you wonder why he's still staying there inside that car, what kind of history he has, what kind of past criminal background or not that he might have. And those are all questions that I guess you all are trying to figure out.
That's exactly correct. I mean, as we go through these dynamic incidents, and luckily for us, this was becoming a little bit static, it's still a high-risk incident for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and our deputies. You know, there are a lot of unknown variables that we are still dealing with when it comes to this type of situation. We don't know if there's other people in the vehicle. We don't know what type of influence or what he's under the influence of. So these different kinds of things happen. We don't know if he's armed. Multitude of different reasons why we cannot just approach this vehicle at the moment, and initiating contact and communicating with him is key. At this moment, the only thing we can is our radio PA speakers on the vehicles to try to communicate him and have him get to step out. However, based on the terrain, based on the distance, I don't know if our deputies are effectively listening to what he's communicating back. So this is still a high-risk, intense situation for our personnel.
Yeah, so bizarre. Well, there are license plates there on the vehicle. Is there an attempt by your people to, I mean, I don't know what protocol is. Do you try to reach out to family members or relatives or get a peg on his address to kind of see what might be going on, to see if somebody might know something, know him, know why he's not getting out of the car?
Oh, yeah. We're utilizing every possible research tool and resource that we have in order to find out more about this person and gain a better understanding of what he's going through and what's going on. The personal identifying information attached to the license plate is a tool that we utilize to try to do a workup on this person. However, one of the things that we have to take consideration is the person driving the vehicle might not necessarily be the person that the vehicle is registered to. So this could be anything from just a reckless DUI suspect to a possible unreported stolen vehicle, and that just leads to the uncertainty of what's happening out in the field and the things that our deputies have to deal with.
Sergeant Basie, do you have an idea as to what the average length of a pursuit is? I'm thinking there are so many that never even make the air because they end so quickly. But then you have those and these long standoffs where you're on for hours at times. Is there an average when it comes to pursuits?
For us, we deal with a multitude of different county areas, a multitude of different contract cities, and we have, on average, anywhere from 1,100 to approximately 2,000 deputies that are on patrol 24 hours a day, you know, through various shifts. We see our fair share of pursuits. We see our fair share of dynamic incidents, and each one is treated individually because each one is different. The circumstances behind every pursuit pertain just to that pursuit, and that's what makes these things so dynamic and difficult to manage at times.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, this pursuit was at a very slow speed. Fortunately for us, the spike strip that was deployed had a very positive effect on the vehicle, and we had enough tires that went flat, and it was able to slow this vehicle down. So now it's just a waiting game for us, and hopefully this guy comes to his senses, or we're able to communicate to him effectively, and he gets out of the car.
Yeah, because you think that this could be somebody's brother, their son, perhaps a father, you just don't know. You make a good point that spike strip was effective. So we've seen the deputies and law enforcement and police get in place and positioned to deploy those spike strips, and they sometimes don't work because the driver's able to drive right around them. Here it looks like he got all 4 tires and he's riding on those rims. When it comes to pursuits and your deputies in training, I know it's part of regular training because pursuits are such a part of Southern California now. How much training do your deputies go through, if you don't mind sharing, when it comes to pursuits? Is it annual training? Do you revisit it every year?
Well, our deputy sheriffs are constantly trained when it comes to our emergency vehicle operations and pursuits. It starts way back in the academy when we send them to our emergency vehicle operations center, and they get a driver's training there. They get emergency vehicle operations training there. They go on a track, and we do mock pursuits. And then from there, when they go out to patrol and they're assigned with their training officer, they have training of driving the vehicle. They get used to driving the vehicle in a real-time scenario. They have someone that's monitoring them as they start to drive. And then in addition to that, we have a series of tabletop exercises that we do during our briefings. We discuss pursuits. We discuss the pursuit policy, what's legally available, what's not available to us based on our pursuit policies, and things of that nature. All of this culminates to the actual pursuit that we see on TV at times, and the pursuits that we don't see on TV at times. You know, it gives the deputies on our department the ability to constantly think on their feet and identify all the various scenarios that could potentially happen in a pursuit. So when they actually are involved in one, they know what to do.
Sergeant Basie, Dan Cohen rejoining the conversation here on Fox 11. You're watching a live picture from Sky Fox, along with Christine Devine. Sergeant Basie, what do you make of this driver's his behavior at this point? He's got the window down. He's sort of hanging out. He had his arms out a moment ago, went back inside the vehicle. He's hanging out again. I can't see what he has in his hand. Is it a phone that he's putting outside? It's maybe a sunglass case. I can't make out what that is, but what do you make of his behavior? It looks like he is hearing the law enforcement officer's commands. They must be asking him to get out of the vehicle. Let's have a peaceful conclusion here. We haven't seen anything along those lines, and now it looks like he's putting a hat on. He was pointing at things a moment ago. He was shaking his fist earlier. Just what do you make of his behavior?
Well, obviously, you can tell that his behavior is erratic at the moment, and it appears that he could potentially be under the influence of a controlled substance, under the influence of alcohol, or there might be some kind of mental illness. We don't know. And based on all these behaviors and based on all these actions that the suspect is portraying at the moment, we deem this to be a very high-risk situation, so we're taking every precaution that we possibly can. Ultimately, we won't know until we actually talk to him and we make contact with him, but this could be just someone that's also very, very distraught, and that's why we're taking our time to do this.
There's never a scenario, Sergeant Basie, where you would substitute time for safety, correct? We're in an isolated area here. There's nothing but open road ahead of him. However, the vehicle is immobilized and not able to ride. You can see that all four tires, for the most part, gone. Just some shreds there and rims. And the officers are willing to play that waiting game. It becomes a little different and a more precarious situation when the sun goes down. But we can see this gentleman gesturing. It looks like he's talking. He is playing games with the officers there to some degree. He is at least able to hear, and I can't tell if he's rolling the window back up or if the window's gone. Maybe that's just my glare. I apologize for that. But it looks like the officers, the strategy at this point is just to wait, right? Wait, continue to communicate. And you made a point earlier, Sergeant Basie, about Christine asked a great question. You know who this driver is, this DUI suspect. At what point would you try to engage a family member, a sibling, a spouse, a loved one to say, hey, it's time, come on out? How would that work?
Well, that decision is going to be made by the on-scene incident commander and our crisis negotiation team. And like I made mention before, we still haven't positively identified this person. Now,
okay.
The vehicle itself could be registered to somebody, but that person not necessarily the person that's driving.
Right.
So until we actually talk to this person and we identify who he is, we can utilize the various tools and resources, in order to bring this to a peaceful resolution. But that decision ultimately comes up to our crisis negotiation team once they establish contact with this person and once they start building that rapport. Because, like I said, these are all tense situations. No one really knows what's going through this person's mind at the moment. And the only thing that we want to do is to be able to safely get him out of the vehicle, safely detain him, get him the medical attention he needs, because we did use pepper balls in the vehicle. And once that's done, try to see what kind of help he needs and basically detain him and figure out what's going on.
It looks like the pepper balls were mildly effective, if I can say, just from my observation here. We saw him put his hands over his face and over his eyes like they maybe had irritated him. But at what point, Sergeant Basie, would you elevate from pepper balls to something, what's next in the tear gas, tear canister, shooting out that back window? At what point would you take it to the next level?
Well, like I said, that's it. That's going to be the determination on the on-scene incident commander once he receives all the information from his people in the field, once our tactical medics get on scene, once our Special Enforcement Bureau gets on scene, and our crisis negotiation. During the planning stage of this incident, they're going to make a determination on what the next course of action is and what the best course of action is for everybody that's involved. So, ultimately, we're standing by, planning, prepping for any possible scenario that's happening here. And this guy here hopefully does come to his senses and he does peacefully surrender, and then we can take him into custody and hopefully bring this to a peaceful resolution.
We don't believe there is anyone else in the vehicle. Is that correct?
We don't believe, but we never know until we actually search the vehicle out.
And we don't believe, or do you know, or have you been able to hear? We don't believe that. We have to assume that he may have a weapon. We haven't heard anything along those lines, though.
Yeah, we haven't heard that he may have a weapon or not. However, we can't take that chance. We have to assume that he is armed. We have to assume that he is going to potentially hurt us. And it's based upon his actions that dictate our actions. He's the one that has to let us know he wants to peacefully resolve this also.
Right.
So as soon as he gives us identifiers or he makes furtive movements that show he wants to be peaceful, then we can go ahead and bring him peacefully. However, this is a very tense and dynamic situation for us. As you can tell, the windows are tinted and they're very, very dark, making it difficult for us to see in there. Earlier in the scenario, he had the window all the way up in the front, making it very difficult for us to see. The use of less than lethal tactics through the use of a pepper ball gun, was able to disperse some type of pepper ball powder into the vehicle, hopefully trying to get him to gain compliance, but it also helped us to get him to lower the window, giving us a better vantage point of this suspect inside the vehicle. Now, with that window down, we're able to see in the vehicle, make it safer for us, make it safer for him, and it also gives us the ability to try to start that dialogue with him. However, ultimately at the moment, we're still standing by, and hopefully he does start that dialogue.
Yeah. Sergeant Basie, thank you. It looks like the window has been sort of rolled back. Oh, he's pushing it back down, or the window has gone back down. His hat, I believe, it may have some sunglasses on. All we know at this point is that we have a DUI suspect believed to be Hispanic. This is in Palmdale. A chase that started around 3 o'clock is approaching 2 hours now. And for the better part of an hour, we've been seeing officers, guns drawn, trained on this man. Tires shredded and gone from spike strips. He was driving at very slow speeds on rims through neighborhoods there. Ended up here on Peaceful Valley Road, in case you're familiar with that area in Palmdale. Officers have been talking, coaxing, trying to get the gentleman to come out. They did fire a couple of rounds of pepper balls that looked like they were mildly effective, although not enough to get the gentleman out of the vehicle. All we know, DUI suspect. We don't know if there's a weapon. We don't believe there's another person in that vehicle, but we don't know the answer to that question for sure. We are going to step away from our coverage here on Sky Fox here and Fox 11 as well, and we will be watching the scenario, watching the situation play out. We will be live once again here in just a few minutes for the Fox 11 News at 5 o'clock. That's in 13 minutes from now. We're going to step away for just a few moments, but we encourage you to tune back in. Thank you for watching. Fox 11, back in just a few moments.
This has been a Fox 11 News special report.
Cool. Armored vehicle just arriving as well.